Rejoicing, rejoicing, rejoicing. Vanished the veils of light and shade, lifted every vapor of sorrow. Sailed away all dawns of fleeting joy, gone the dim sensory mirage. Love, hate, health, disease, life, death. Perished these false shadows on the screen of duality. Waves of laughter, scylla's of sarcasm, melancholic whirlpools, melting in a vast sea of bliss. The storm of Maya stilled by magic wand of intuition deep. We come to the path, having wandered long and far, seeking happiness, seeking joy, seeking fulfillment. Lifetime after lifetime, era after era within any given lifetime, we reach, grab the bag, and find it empty. And then a glimmer of hope shows up. We get all the self-help books, we get all the possibilities, but then we see someone who has, or read of someone, or hear of someone in a way that vibrationally convinces us there is somebody who has what we've always sought, what we've always wanted. And with great rejoicing, the great rejoicing of Palm Sunday, we welcome that into our lives. We open the door and just throw palm fronds out in front of whatever it is that's going to bring us this blessing, this sense of final fulfillment. And at some point along the way, it's an avatar. It's the real thing. It's Jesus Christ. It's Bhagavan Krishna. It's Moses. It's the Buddha. It's Confucius. And we lay ourselves out there, everything we have, all of our hopes, all of our dreams, all of our aspirations, all of our efforts get laid right there. And we watch them ride, well, a little unceremoniously, was on the back of a donkey or an ass, you know. It was not that royal an entry into Jerusalem, except that people could feel. It was humble, it was simple. It comes in. And immediately what happens is this unbelievable dynamic tension sets up. And I'd like to invite the choir or the singers up, because we have one of the most beautiful pieces of music I think I've ever heard in a lifetime that captures this dynamic tension so poignantly. So if you would come up.
Get thee behind me, Jesus declared. Satan, know you not our Father offers love in your stead. His gift of love to all is my only food. He is all I own. What does man need but him?
And the darkness lifted, love destroyed Satan's power. Then at last the Savior could begin bringing all to God. For he taught
is all I love. He is all there is. Wise is he who says, I am wholly his. God is all I fear, though my throne of power, shaken by his love, was destroyed in that hour.
Throughout all the world, a new spirit was born. Jesus brought to men's hearts hope for those steeped in sin.
God is all I love. He is all there is. Wise is he who says, I am wholly his. God is all I love. He is all there is. Wise is he who says, I am wholly his.
He comes in to the claim of everybody. The multitudes rejoicing in his presence. And the very first thing he does is he goes into the temple and disrupts the order. He throws out the money changers. He makes this enormous dynamic tension between the voice of love, which is never timid. Real love is the fabric of the universe. And he walks in with all of that power and drives out everything less. And if Jerusalem, if our nature, if our own inner workings would simply in that moment listen and cooperate, what a different story it would be. But what happens to our nature? What happens to those parts of us that are so well established and so full of our own certainty of how life really is and so committed to our sense of authority and our sense of power and our control over the moments of life? We rebel. And we try and reassert those things, And so inside of us, because the story of Easter, the story of Christ's life, is both a living example of how it works and a metaphor for what happens inside each one of us. And throughout the week, he teaches and he teaches and he teaches. But at night, they leave the city and they go across the valley into the Garden of Gethsemane, the Mount of Olives. And there they, in the midst of the orchards, and it was fields of olive trees, there where you can see the town of Jerusalem, but you're safe from the influence of the guards and all of the control of the Pharisees and Sadducees. There they would rest simply at night and then go back in. And he was just sharing. All he was sharing was the story of love, how life really works. But the tension builds and the tension builds and the tension builds. And instead of avoiding it, he didn't have to go to Jerusalem. He chose. They tried to convince him, do anything else but this. Don't go there. We can just be spiritual on the side. We don't have to confront all these aspects of our own nature. Leave them alone. We can go to the kirtans. We can meditate. We can have a nice spiritual life. We can go to church on Sunday. We don't have to make a big thing about the rest of our lives. Leave it alone. We can go and have our cake and eat it too. The Mahabharata is another story. It's the Eastern version of this same story, where the part of us that's so eager to wake up and be fulfilled in the only way we ever will be, in spirit, gets confronted by those forces that are so committed to how we think it's supposed to be. And the great tragic character in that story is a soul named Karna. And he represents the desire for happiness in this world. The desire for happiness is God-born. It's a God-given thing. It's the central driving force in every life. But when you harness it to this life, it becomes the tragic character. It becomes the thing that will never be fulfilled. It's always betrayed at the last minute. And it looks like time and time again, like the forces of darkness, the forces of materialism are going to win. And in this story again, the forces of materialism, they gather up Jesus. You know, if you haven't, we don't have time to run through the week, all the things that happened in that week. Read it this week. Tune into it because it's our story. Here we are, we are so close. Yogananda said that by the time we understand, even remotely, that what we're looking for might be God, we're very close to the end. It's just a few more lifetimes. We have wandered millions of lifetimes to get to the point where we realize it isn't just another color hair or another kind of date or another just another 10% of the wealth or having a different car. None of those things. When we really even have a glimmering that it's God that's going to fulfill us. And only God. His love and His joy, our union, not just here we are and we get a little bit of His love and a little bit of His joy, but we become that love, we become that joy. We're so close. And then what happens? Our friends betray us, they belittle us. They tear us down. Our thoughts betray us, they belittle us, they tear us down. And the temptation. And the disciples are such a perfect example of where we are when we're caught in the middle. We're not in the world and we're not yet free. And there's the moment in the Garden of Gethsemane. And the guards come. Materialism comes to drag our spirituality and our spiritual life away to be tried and scourged and crucified. And we go, I don't know Him. I've never seen Him. We deny it. We push it away. We're terrified at the implications. Because what we discover really is true. Really is true. That until everything is given over, the ultimate fulfillment will never be ours. And we're so terrified that if we really let go of the last little vestiges, and this is a real thing. Yogananda's foremost woman disciple, an incredibly elevated soul, so close to freedom. She came late in her life to Mount Washington to be a nun. And she just gave it all up. She had nothing but a little closet and a little sign that said, God alone. Literally a bed, a little closet, and a beautiful little sign. And her life was just given to service. And then some guests were coming to Mount Washington. And she was asked to give up her closet. And she said, Lord, even this? I don't have anything left. Even this? And she received a response that if we want God, nothing outwardly is ours. Nothing outwardly is ours. And so they crucified Him. Our spirituality gets crucified because we hang on to our closet. We hang on to our dog or our cat. Or we hang on to our little things that we're so sure are finally going to give us. Think about it. Dog or God? One of them is backward. And then where do you stand? Where do you stand in the midst of it? There he was. He was just a guy. He just got up with him. But they could feel something different. But he didn't use his power for self-protection and self-defense. He didn't use his power for self-aggrandizement. He used it outward in blessing, in radiance, no matter what came. And he even knew, it's a human event. This is not a pretend show. They're not different from us. There he is in the Garden of Gethsemane, and what is he doing? He knows what's coming. He says, I would go and pray with my Father. Stand alert, be awake, pray for me. This is my moment. And they nod off. And he goes over, and what's his prayer? Lord, this doesn't look that good. Surely there must be a better way of delivering this message of love than going through this process of crucifixion. It looks messy, it looks ugly, it looks hard, it looks painful, and it looks like it creates an enormous karma that ends up washing through. But then he says, nevertheless, you know better than I, thy will be done. And he gives himself over in complete surrender. And Easter only comes, even in our own lives, Easter only comes at the end of that process. And every one of us has to walk that. We rejoice to have, we're given, when we come to the path, we're given a honeymoon period. And it's blissful, it's joyful. We feel what it's like to be awake in God. But if we have residual karma, and all karma we're talking about is a commitment to something less being the source of our happiness. To the degree we have any vestiges left, we have to go through the middle ground from the time of Palm Sunday, through all of that dynamic tension, out the far side, through the crucifixion, until we discover that nothing can destroy our spirituality, nothing can destroy our connection with life, with God, with life. He said, Christ said, you'll have plenty of persecutions, you'll have plenty of trials, but be of good cheer. I am the master of the world, and the last thing that shall be conquered is death itself. That's the promise to every one of us. This delusion of having a body, having a mind, having a personality, having people like you or not like you, behave, all these things on the surface, on the superficial level, they're just a dream, they just vanish. And what's there always, if we dig beneath the surface, is that eternal love of God, that eternal light of God. As we go through this Easter week, let's take it in. Let's drink it in. I loved that reading. Do you have the book, Michael, still with you? Thank you. Thank you. Arjuna is in the presence of an avatar, and the avatar drops the human form. And he's the divine in all its splendor. O infinite light, thy radiance spreading o'er the universe shines into the very darkest abyss. Thy voice overwhelms the roar of cosmic cataclysms. Lo, the myriad stars are thy diadem. Thy scepter radiates power everywhere. O immortal Brahman, Lord of all, again and again at thy feet of infinity, I lie in prostration before thee. And then Arjuna says to the Lord, he says, would you mind taking your more human form? I'm a little disconcerted. I'd like to end the talk this morning. This reading is, if you follow through the crucifixion, you follow through Easter, you follow through the moments, because Jesus came back, but there was a window of time in between the crucifixion and the denial in the heart of spirituality, when there was no place to stand. He's gone. He's just gone. And all there's left is your own pettiness, your own contraction, your own sense of having denied that which fed you, that which held the promise that you knew had to be real, and no place to stand, and your faith is completely shaken. And then there's a story. They were fishermen, and Peter and the others, they got back on the fishing boat and just went back to what they knew. And there they are fishing. We were in the Holy Land. And there's a place where this happened. You can go and you feel it. They're fishing, and they fish at night because that's when the fish are biting. That's when they can catch them. And they're sailing into the dawn mists. And there on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, they see a figure through the mist. And as they get closer, all of a sudden, Peter sees that it's Jesus, who he denied 3 times. He denied him in the time of his most greatest need. And he dives overboard and he swims to shore. And Jesus just says to him, he says, and there he is. He's in the flesh. He's been crucified. There he is in the flesh. He says, do you love me? He says, yes. Do you love me? Yes. Do you love me? Yes. Once for each of the denials. And then, you know what he does? Jesus makes them breakfast. Isn't that sweet? He makes them breakfast. He just takes all of the phenomenon out of it. It's just this moment, in whatever form we're playing it out. I take the sacred vow, number 201. Never will I lower my love's gaze below the eyebrow horizon of my constant thoughts of thee. Never will I turn my uplifted inner sight away from thee. Never will I let my mind dwell on anything that reminds me not of thee. I will disdain the nightmare of ignorant behavior. I will court all dreams of noble achievement, those of love, kindness, and understanding, for those are thy dreams. And though I dream many dreams wakefully, I will ever think of thee in the sacred fire of constant remembrance, kept alight on my soul's altar. I will ever behold thy presence with the watchful eyes of devotional love. Thy grace has shown me that the dualities of health and sickness, life and death, joy and sorrow are but passing fantasies. I am finished with those eternally self-canceling delusions. I am persuaded at last that there is but one abiding reality, thy eternal, ever-conscious, ever-new, ever-thrilling, infinite bliss. Let's take a moment of silence.